Welcome. Thank you guys all for joining
Come
me
forward.
today. Um, Thank you guys who are watching, but also thank all four of you who are joining me today. I'm going to do a little intro and then we'll start our conversation. Uh, Welcome to those of you who are watching this video. This is my usual intro. My name is Kelly Baker Josephs. I am the founder and editor of Manchineel Seagrape, which is dedicated to publishing open access editions of Caribbean plays. I am here today with, let's read in order here, Carol Laws and Eugene Williams, who are on one camera together, Honor Ford Smith and Pat Kumper. They're here today to discuss their play, Fallen Angel and the Devil Concubine. And this is part of a series of conversations with Caribbean playwrights and creators whose plays are or will be published in Manchineel Seagrape. We would like to thank the Caribbean Digital Scholarship Collective, the Mellon Foundation, and the University of Miami for their support of this series of conversations. I'll start with a summary of the play. Fallen Angel, it's a very quick summary. Fallen Angel and the Devil Concubine is set in downtown Kingston in 1980s Jamaica. It is a two-hander play. That is, it features only two actors who are Letty and Katie, two women in their 70s. Both are living in a derelict, abandoned mansion to which both claim the right to ownership. As the play unfolds, we learn that neither tells the whole truth and both are vulnerable to the physical, financial, and social threats that lie beyond the walls of the place they have claimed as their home. As I said, it's a very short summary. There's a lot more to it. And so we'll move into that conversation about the play. Let's start with the unusual, or it's not unusual, but not usual, let's say, um, fact that this play was co-created in performance and then scripted. Could you tell us a little bit about what inspired the first performance and then the scripting? And what is the process of moving from performance to script like?
Well, let me say first of all that as one of the original directors, uh, I came to the work sometime after Anna and Carol had done some research and improvisation with Hertencer Lindsay, who was the other director, my co-director. So let me leave that question, rest of that answer to that question to Carol and Anna.
Anna, you go.
We probably all have different memories, so many different truths. Well, as I recall, and I could be wrong, we didn't intend to create Fallen Angel and the Devil Concubine. At the time when we did it, a sculptor, a Jamaican sculptor, had died, Edna Manley, and we were planning to do a piece about her. And we started working on it, and we started with a suitcase. That was what I remember. We started with a suitcase, and as often happens in collective creation, the prop and the interaction with the prop by the actors took on a life of its own. And before we knew it, we had the characters of Katie and Letty, and we had relegated Edna Manley to the future, which we never did, and we never came back to it. So that was how it started, and then we began to create actions around the suitcase, things that were in the suitcase, things that were carried in the suitcase, etc. And that's where the letters came from. And Carol began to create Letty based on women who she had seen walk up and down Duke Street, which back in the day was the under the colonial use of space, Duke Street was this street that was allocated to lawyers. So this character that Carol created was based on a woman that she saw walking up and down the street, picking up legal documents out of the garbage of the law, and who would also attend court, as a theatricalization of power of the time. So that's my memory of what happened. There's more to it than that, but we'll probably have a chance to address some of the stories in the play, because we also used our memories, family stories, family histories, things that we had observed from the past, and we brought them in, but we didn't bring them in as documentary truths. We took a bit of this and a bit of that and mixed it up, and as Salman Rushdie said, a bit of this and a bit of that, that is how newness enters the world, and that's precisely what we did in rehearsal.
Carol, do you have additional?
Well, as Anna said, there are several truths to this. And while what she said is true, it is also true that we just wanted to do something. We wanted to do one-woman pieces. But we were too nervous to do a whole evening on our own. So we said, okay, let's do something where the first half would be half of you and half of me, and then the second half we would do together. And the second half overtook the one-woman ideas. And that was part of the origin story.
When I came into the fray is when Carol and Anna asked me if I would direct the play.
Hold on a minute. Can we go to the writing of the play? Because remember what
does that come
happened
before?
No, we're not.
yeah,
I'm not going
what
to talk about
happened was-
directing the play. I'm going to talk about the creation, how it came to be created.
Yeah, I know, but Anna and Carol
Invitation.
invited me into their improvs. And I got tapes from them. I got documents from them. I got all sorts of things that they sent me away with. And then I think I put together a first draft of something.
But that was much later.
That was much later.
Okay.
Yes, that's much later. Right. So they asked me if I would direct the play, and I said okay. And we set a date for when they would show me what they had, and I saw what they had, and I realized that there was much more that needed to be done in terms of devising and building the play. So we set rehearsals, and I would plan beforehand what I was going to go in with. In some cases, I would go in with a scenario or an event, or devices such as props, or costume bits. And I would, set up a trigger, set up a situation. And as they worked, there are instances that I would coach. And one of the joys that I have whenever I go back to the play is realizing how wonderful these two ladies are as actresses, particularly in improvisation. Because while they were working, I would just throw something in the midst, an image, something that they would have said, and they would just go with it, right? Never trying to analyze or judge it. Just go with it and work with each other. And to date, I would say most of the events in the play came out of that process of the devising and the triggering and the use of objects and pieces of costumes. Of course, after improvisations were complete, we would sit and evaluate what is it that we achieved today that was of use. And then there came a time when we had quite a number of events, scenes, and the time was almost upon us to start, to produce it. And we discussed, well, what we're going to do. We don't have the time to do the scripting of the thing, pulling it together. Who do we know that would understand the voices of these two women and what we were trying to create? And that is when we asked Pat to come in. And then Pat will tell you about what she went about doing. And she brought us a draft, and we talked about it, and she came, and she went again. She came back a couple of times, and I also gave her a structure for each movement,
Recordings.
and the recordings of the improv.
Oh,
So
no.
Pat can tell you what happened after that.
I think that basically covers it, actually, because like I said, I sat in on a couple of the improv sessions, just being absorbent, I guess. And yeah, the two characters were just amazing. I mean, they just literally they were there in just a wonderful sense, and their language was there. I went away, and I think the first draft was like 40 minutes. It was short. And then the idea was, since there seemed to be some sort of shape coming out of it, as you said, the three movements almost, that the idea was to then go away and flesh it out a little bit, on the basis of quite long, quite detailed character sketches that had been drawn up, and then my memory of the improv, of course, but also the tapes that had come. So like most writers, you kind of just go into a place where you just have to let it all come at you, and you try and do your best. And yeah, as Eugene says, it was a bit of a back and forth process after that, but we bumped it up to, I think it placed about, what, 75 minutes now? I don't know, 75, 80 minutes. It's not hugely long, but it began to have that quite distinct shape. And then what was fun for me was the big themes beginning to emerge in the writing, what the characters represented, quite apart from the humanity and what they represented in various situations. So I think I probably was a playwright who was available at the time. I'm not sure if I was the one that they wanted, but I was the one that did it.
No, there wasn't anybody else. We didn't have anybody else competing with you. We all unanimously agreed on you. It's a rare thing that we unanimously agree on anything, but that was
True.
Oh, what was the context of that first performance? Like, where was it? I know this is published elsewhere, but tell us a little bit about the first performance of Fallen Angel and the Devil Concubine.
Well, I just want to say that I remember, I always want to call the name of Dennis Scott because he had such an impact on all of us who are sitting here. I think Platt, with you too, right? Because he did, yeah. And the first performance was in the Dennis Scott Theater. And I remember that we sent him a draft. He was then teaching, I think, at Yale. And we sent him a draft. And I remember he gave one comment, and it was,
oops.
On that draft, you might want to give the audience, in the intermission, had an interval between the first and the second.
Anna,
Anna, we're losing you.
And the comment was to give the audience a reason to coffee. I'll never forget that. But obviously we did give them a come back in after coffee. Sorry? My internet is unstable. Can you hear me?
We can hear you
right
now. Repeat all that you just said.
You said, what did he say?
I was remembering Dennis Scott and recalling that he had a huge impact on all of us, and saying that the theater that we opened in, the Dennis Scott Theater, It wasn't called, later on it became the Dennis Scott Theatre. And I remember that we had sent him a draft when Pat did one of the early drafts, and his comment, his only comment on it was, there was just one comment, and it was, you might want to give the audience a reason to come back in after they've had coffee.
Oh.
That was about the intermission. So I think we did tweak it more in terms of plot, so that they wanted to know what was going to happen next. That was his main comment. It opened at the Dennis Scott, which is now called the Dennis Scott. It was then called the Studio Theatre, at the School of Drama. And I don't have many more memories than that. Anybody else?
Well, you guys might want to talk about the remote, because I understand that the remote it created quite a stir. I was not there when it
It
was
did,
remounted at the
I
Ward
have to
Theatre.
say, it did create, there was a lot of response to it, and I think partly
Breaking
because,
up, breaking up.
can you hear me now? Am I okay?
You're fine for us. I think Honor, you might have some breaking up,
Yeah,
but Pat,
I'm going to come off and
Yeah.
come back in. I'm having trouble. I'm
okay.
so sorry.
So
It's
it
not,
goes.
there's nothing I can do about it. I'll come, I'm going to come off on the next door neighbor. Okay, bye.
Hi. Wait, so the first one was in 1987 at the School of Drama,
Right.
and then the second, so the remount, what you're calling the remount, was the second, or
Yes, it was the
third or
second.
fourth? It was the
It's
second,
the second.
okay.
It was the second one.
And that was at the Ward Theatre, is that what you
Right.
said?
Right.
And when was that one?
Well, I don't
Might have been the year after or something.
sometime around
It was part of Buddy Puyatis, who asked us to do it at the Ward as part of a series of productions that was representing the Ward Theatre's Season of Excellence.
Oh,
So we were invited to be part of the Season of Excellence. And that's how we ended up at the Ward.
Which is a huge theatre. It's completely different from the studio, which is quite small. So to be able for two actresses to dominate that space is a hell of an achievement. But then it also went to Toronto, because I was stage manager for that one, and had to do all the off stage sound effects and all the necessary, which was a new experience for me, but great fun.
when was the Toronto?
I can't remember exactly when it was. It must have been like a couple of, this is a long time ago. I have kind of visual
Okay.
memories.
Not only is it a long time ago, but we did it in so many different places.
Mm.
Toronto was one.
Boston was another.
We did it in
Wow,
Boston.
this place has traveled.
Yes.
We did it in the Caribbean. We did it in Trinidad, didn't we?
Just can't remember where
Yeah,
else.
we're old. When we did it, we were young.
What I would say though is that there was a point at which I realized that the play was the most directed, produced play in
Caribbean.
across the Caribbean. You know, most produced Caribbean play
Okay.
across the Caribbean. Productions done in various territories, islands, by other production companies.
Mhm.
You know, it was also done by a company in Toronto, in Barbados, in Guyana. I think Carol, you
I
directed.
directed the panel.
Yeah.
In Toronto, it was done, Katie was played as a trans person, and it was played by a man who played Katie. So that was an interesting choice.
That was another, I mean, the original cast did Toronto, and then that's another production of it.
Yeah,
More recent, yeah.
I didn't even know it was
wow.
happening when it happened, but yeah, it played as a trans. Roma Spencer played Carol's part, Letty, and John Sadler, who's a Canadian actor that grew up in some of his life in Jamaica. He played Katie, and he played it as a trans person. It was one of the things about it is it raises a lot of questions about what translates when you cross borders. The English, I remember, did not get it at all. They didn't like it.
Maybe they didn't want to get it.
Perhaps.
We did it as part of the London International Festival of Theatre.
Mm.
And didn't we do it another time as well? Or didn't we do 2 times in London? I can't remember anymore.
We did it at different venues. I think it was the same.
Yes, we did it in Brixton. And we did it at the Almeida.
At the Oval.
And we did it at the Oval. We did it in at least 3 venues in London.
The last one was the Almeida, which I remember vividly because
that was the lift.
They put us up in London University dorms, and we had to get to the Almeida, which was in Islington, and London Transit went on strike, and it was hot in a way that only England can be hot, where they have no AC, and the steam of centuries come out of the walls and fill up the place with steam. We had to walk to the Almeida because there was no way we could get there by public transit. We had
when
to
was this on it?
What?
When was this?
This was in the 80s. I don't remember exactly what year, but it was in London. I don't remember. It was in the 80s. We walked to the Almeida, grumbling all the way. We got there. We had 2 shows. By the end of the first show, I was wet. When I tell you wet, I mean all the makeup had sweated off, and my costume was literally sodden with water. I got off the stage, I wrung out the costume, put on back the wet costume, and went back on. Finish the show, and as usual, England, we come out the theater at 10:30, having done 2 shows, starving, hungry, and everything was closed. And we had to walk back down to London University. At that point, I thought to myself, there must be an easier job. And that was the moment when I considered becoming a professor.
I would say it's an easier job, but I'm going to ask about the naming of the play, the title of the play, as well as the naming in the play. So I don't know how this might have been part of the improv and then got captured in the writing. Let's start with the title of the play. Why did you choose Fallen Angel and The Devil Concubine, and how often we
I
shorten
think
it to
you
Fallen
should
Angel?
speak to that.
Honestly, that's the one thing I don't remember.
I'll tell you what I remember. Like I said, I was not in the initial stages, but when I was in charge of the devising process, when I became part of that devising process, I recall that the names came up in the improvisation.
Oh, I remember something. Eugenie just triggered me. I remember something.
Your mother had a lady that used to work
Yes,
with her
yes.
that used to talk about fallen
Yes,
angels.
yes. Mommy, my mother was very, very ill at the time, very ill. And she had a caregiver who was a maroon, and she had a sweet tooth of immense proportions. And she used to tell me a lot of stories. And one of the stories was about a fallen angel. And she was explaining to me that fallen angels come in the district and little more a picnic disappear. And them like sweet things and so on. So that was where the idea of the fallen angel came from. It came from this lady, but it doesn't appear as somebody who takes away children. It just appears as Carol recognizing this strange white woman, and trying
Who
to
could only have been a fallen angel.
her. I think yeah. So that was how it got. There's a classic example of a bit of this and a bit of that, and you mix it all up. Yeah.
And I mean, good practice to have a title that was so startling, because I don't remember similar titles for anything else, that it actually got people's attention really quite quickly. So whoever decided, I don't know who decided, but whoever decided that that was it, because it's a long title and that's a risk. But I thought it was a good hook, good, clever way of getting audiences in.
I don't remember where Devil Concubine came from.
Devil
though.
Concubine came because of what Letty's story turned out to be.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because Letty was interfered with by the devil in the form of this, what he was, an overseer or whatever he was,
Busher.
where she worked.
Mm.
Um, so having come up with Fallen Angel, it was clear that the white lady was the fallen angel, and we had to decide what the black lady was, and that came from her story.
Yeah.
You know,
And the,
I
the
don't know that
process with these
it
two
lasts.
ladies was very inventive, as you can tell,
Yeah.
because this is what they turned up in the devising process, in the battle that was going on, very fierce battle between them for the house. This
Yes.
old derelict colonial mansion. So when it came time to title it, you know, we had the information, we just had to put it together appropriately.
I was saying that, in reading it, you could also switch how you've assigned Fallen Angel and Devil Concubine, and think about it, switching who we
Yeah.
think of the fallen angel as.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of their names, it's written in the script as Letty and Katie, but during the performance, they also have two other names. And so I wondered, Christy, I believe, is one, and Lillian. And so I don't know if I'm misunderstanding the double naming and if it's a very Jamaican thing to have more than one name, but
Part of it
was
was
that
the
a choice?
arrogance of this white woman. She decided that Letty was Christy.
No,
Notice that?
I
And
don't. Your name was Christina Christie. Me, isn't that
I
the
don't remember.
LeBlanc Christina
Yeah.
Christie?
Yes, yes.
My Katie's real name is Lillian.
Lillian.
And
Mhm.
that actually came from a true story told by my grandmother of my family originally comes from Westmoreland, and there was a Lillian who was a fallen aristocracy, and had married a black man, had a disabled child. So I based that part of the story on this woman, who actually was my great aunt, and so that's what I based it on. I
and I
based that,
think
but
uh,
in a broader sense, I was trying to explore. I was trying to explore race. What would happen if white women attempted to give up privilege? That was one of the questions I was trying to explore. When colonialism ends, it's quote unquote ends, because of course we know it hasn't. What then happens to the colonizer and the colonized? And in Fanonian terms, everybody has to find a new identity. And so this was my response to that question. How this character, in a way, was my response to the question, what possibility of reinvention is there? And how do you cross these racial barriers that have been erected by colonialism? Is it possible? And so, in a way, the play went with that. And if the English didn't like it, that might have been why. But I think the other reason the English didn't like it, because they couldn't understand the language. And they said that the play was, quote unquote, I remember in the review, it said the play was prating about props. I'll never forget that. So they obviously didn't understand a thing.
Carol, were you
I think
remembering
also,
Letty?
no, I was just going to say that part of Letty naming Lillian Katie
Mm-hmm.
was a part of her effort to show that she was not going to take on the superiority that Lillian presented. She was cutting her down to size. And she decided that her name was Katie, and that was that. Nothing
And
that she said would make her, um, move from that position
makes sense.
until I think the end. Wasn't there something in the end
Yes,
where there
yeah.
was a humanity
Yeah.
that overtook the two of them?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Oh, thank
Recognition that
you.
they need each other.
Yes.
But it's also that Letty makes a decision to it's Letty's generosity that ends the play. It's Letty's decision to accept Katie. That's the end of the play, because it's not, Lillian doesn't change so she changes a little in that the truth is revealed, and she stop putting on airs and pretending that it's her father's town mansion, which of course it isn't. She
But
has to
Letty also sees that Katie needs looking after.
Yeah,
She can't
that is very
manage,
important, Carol. That is very, very
she
important.
cannot manage, and Letty has decided that, all right, we will look after it. Yeah.
So that to
I
me
know
is the thing, like what in the allegorical, the play in a sense is an allegory. And so why should Letty accept Katie? She could just as easily turf her out or get rid of her. So that the play is in a sense at a deeper level about that decision, and Pat and Carol give a reason for that.
And we
I,
also saw the parallel with Jamaica, and race in Jamaica and how race related to the country.
yeah.
And with the whole sort of undertone of colonialism, there was a point when it was presented as the white people owning the place, and there came a point when the black people decided that it was for their place. But there was space for both of them in the country.
And don't you think in
That's
Jamaica there's a
right.
politics of naming, that you don't let people know your government name until you actually trust them? So that when you eventually get to the point where real names are told, that is a point of real vulnerability. And the acceptance or otherwise of that talks about whether relationships can be established. Because I know a lot of people whose name I never did know until I got near their funeral or saw something like that, because you don't tell people your government name if you are in a position of vulnerability. And the other thing that I think we tried hard to deal with, because Kingston was ravaged with it, was the idea of mental health. So I think something to do with women and how women look after one another, and the idea of how do we deal with people who have mental health challenges and why they have them, was, I don't know if it was subliminal to all of us, but I do think it was a very powerful theme throughout
The play.
the exploration and the play itself.
I
Yes,
think there's
go
also the issue of
ahead.
the issue of power. Uh, Rex Nettleford said something once which I find is it's quite apt here when he talks about um, the political class and the upper middle class and so on. They govern, but the people rule. And it is clear that who's in charge in that house, you know.
There's
That
also the
is
element of the outside element, the boys,
It's the boys,
the
yeah.
boys
Boy.
that
the threats from
both had
outside,
to
yes.
address.
Mm-hmm.
they both had to address the issue of the boys.
Mm.
And I think there comes a point when they realize that they can't handle, and neither one could handle the boys alone.
Mm.
So there had to be some coming together in order to deal with the outside forces.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
it is that I
One moment,
Mhm.
everybody. We are at 1:38,
Oh,
and we were doing half an hour. So
oh,
I knew
wow.
with four of you. So I'm just going to give that last moment. Also, if anyone could tell us what present day theater is like in
I
in
want to say
Jamaica.
something though, can I please? Because it's also
Yes,
related.
and Eugene was also saying something.
Yeah. Um, there's Pat raised the question of homelessness, and that also raises for me the issue of urban space. We're living in a moment of profound urban um, disruption here in Kingston right now, but it was happening also in the 80s. And space in a way in the post-colonial setting is a determinant of race. Race becomes space. And one of the things that has happened in Jamaica, in fact, I was just talking about it with Eugene at midnight last night, that we have very few spaces where the classes actually mix. And so
Pegasus.
the upper middle class is sandwiched um, into St. Andrew largely and in some pockets. So where is the space for mixing? And so in a way, the decrepit colonial mansion becomes a way of discussing how space allows us access to resources and how space allows us to break down these binaries of black and white, which have been handed to us by colonialism. So I think space is a critical issue, the urban context and the way in which classes and races come together in spatial terms.
Eugene, thanks, Honor. Eugene, you were going
Well,
to close
I
us
would,
out?
yeah. You're about to ask a question on what is the state of theater in Jamaica today.
Mm-hmm.
I would try and link my response um, uh, as I try to answer that question in terms of why we chose to devise a play, all right, and the value of it. And this is not the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Devising theater has been something that was developed, for instance, with Sistren Theater
Yeah.
Collective and a number of other um, people who were either faculty at the School of Drama or graduates in the School of Drama. Because of the absence of alternative plays that were not the accustomed melodramas, comedy, and farce of the commercial theater in Jamaica. And so there was a growing appetite to devise plays. And the three of us have had a history of the devising plays, either separately or together.
Mm-hmm.
The last one that I did was with one woman piece with Carol, right? So it is coming out of that, and we were learning from that, learning from people like Sistren and graduate theater company which came out of the school, processes to do devising work.
Mm-hmm.
That decline that has been happening perhaps from the late 80s in the theater in Jamaica happened at the same time with the rise of commercial theater and the demise of quote unquote not-for-profit theater, which in the 70s, 80s, and even prior to that, not-for-profit was where people did it because they enjoyed doing it and they weren't being paid a salary. So they were, in essence, financing it.
Mhm.
What has happened now in the local theater is that it's entirely commercial, right? And we find that the people who used to write the plays and give them to a producer and a director are now in charge of everything and doing it for a living. So
Mhm.
the producer-driven head is what determines what the local fare is, by and
Mhm.
large, in Jamaica today. Because as one playwright said to me, he said, when he asked me to direct one of his pieces, he said, I use my own money. And this is a guy who did some very good plays, 70s, 80s. He said, I use my own money. So I want the people to have a belly laugh per minute. Right? So and he now does it for a living. And he writes 2 plays per year. It's difficult to maintain that and write
Mhm.
two good plays. So that in a sense gives you an idea of the trajectory of what has happened and what is the state of things today. So much so that I'm sure that both Carol and Anna still harbor ambitions of building a play from improvisation, devising it, because they want to do that kind of theater, you know.
Um, we're well over time. This is such a I want to keep going, but we can't. So I'm going to close here rather than continue more. Thank you guys. Don't hang up though. I'll talk to you afterwards. Um, Thank you guys so much for making time in the middle of your day or at the end of your day, Pat,
And
um, to be here to have this conversation and to give us some of the backstory of Fallen Angel and a Devil Concubine. Thank you so much. I'm going to first stop the live stream.
I have to say thank you for
Everyone.
keeping it alive, Kelly.
We're
Keeping
working on
Fallen
it. We're
Angel
working
alive.
on
I want
it.
to say something now. Are we offline?
Uh, we one moment.
Yes, it's offline.
It's offline thing.